Erich is doing his icebreaker today, and his speech is entitled, A Low-Tech Guy in a High-Tech World. Please welcome Erich.
Thank you very much. Madam Toastmaster, fellow club members, it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. I'm really excited about this organization and to be here with you, and I look forward to getting to know more of you and joining this community of learning so that we can all get better at this harsh topic. My name is Erich Pearson. I was born in Elizabethtown, New York, which is in the Adirondack Mountains, not far from the shores of Lake Champlain, where on many Sundays for several years, a dozen or two members of my extended family would trek on Sunday afternoon, and we would hike across a cow pasture for about a half a mile, being careful where we stepped, climb over a barbed wire fence, and eventually reach the bluffs overlooking the lake, where it was just absolutely fantastic fishing. And people would fish and drink beer and play mumbly peg if they were of a certain age, and if they were kids like me, we'd fish and we'd swim. The lake was full of yellow perch and rock bass, northern pike, muskie and walleye, and all kinds of great fish. And to this day, I still greatly appreciate a good fish dinner. And I've always had an affinity for the underdog. I tend to relate to underdogs, and I think part of this has a geographic origin. You see, Lake Champlain is the 6th largest freshwater lake in North America. Unfortunately, they stopped calling them great after the first 5. Elizabethtown itself first came under the ownership of the European settlers in the early 18th century. It was discovered by a group of fur trappers and traders and frontiersmen who were hired by the governor of New York to blaze a new trade route from the fort at Albany to the one in Montreal, which was really dangerous, dirty, cold, hungry work. They're out there and they have to deal with wild animals and inhospitable native populations and hunger and cold and wet. And they were gone for months. And when they got back, they declined their monetary compensation that they were promised. Instead, they asked for tracts of land in what is now Essex County in Elizabethtown, because they claimed, and they believed this, that they had discovered the site of the original Garden of Eden. Now, several generations later of these folks, I call this damning with faint praise, they named this place Pleasant Valley. One of those fishermen was my Uncle Mike. When I was in the 8th grade, he was also an electrician. He bought me one of those Radio Shack 20-in-1 electronic project kits. I don't know if anybody remembers those from back in the day. They had the little spring-loaded contacts, and I spent hours whiling away time up in my room, out of my mom's hair, building things like crystal radios and diode arrays and little miniature synthesizers. And it occurs to me, looking back on that my career and the arc of my career has followed the cusp of technology. And by that I mean the following year when I entered my freshman year of high school was the very first commercially available electronic calculator came out on the market. It was called the Bomar Brain. I don't know if anybody remembers the Bomar Brain. It added, subtracted, multiplied, and divided, and it only cost you $89. When I was a junior in high school, I was fortunate that my high school obtained a salvaged Digital Equipment Corporation PDP-8, which was an old group-sized computer, smaller than a mainframe, bigger than a personal computer, of which none existed at the time. My chemistry professor taught me how to write basic programming language on that computer, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So I would ditch all of my study halls and go there and write code. Eventually got a hold of a hobbyist magazine which had a Star Trek game in it, and when I put that in there, forget it. I wasted a lot of time. chasing Klingons around this virtual galaxy. When I entered Boston University's School of Engineering in the fall of 1977, we were the very first class in the history of the school that didn't have to learn how to use a slide rule because of the electronic calculators that come along. By my sophomore year, I had a 12-step programmable Texas Instrument. The next year, I got the HP 41CV, which was 300-step programmable. And by the time I graduated, you had to have a personal computer and take a design lab where you hook something up to it and control it. So that's how fast the technology was catching up. And I was right on that wave. My first job was as a laboratory assistant for the Denver Research Institute. And I was just soldering boards together and doing testing for the engineers and the technicians. And eventually, within less than a year, we started getting requests from these projects to write software. And nobody really knew what that was, program stuff. And the engineers, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. And the technicians were the same, because they felt that wasn't manly work. That was just sitting in front of a keyboard. So they said, Erich, you're in school. Ever take a Fortran class? I said, yeah. Okay, well, we want you to do this. So I got to program some pretty cool stuff. And I don't do programming anymore. I did a lot of that early in my career. I've since moved on to other things. Unfortunately, programming is fun. It's like solving a puzzle. But the real puzzle is to get people to get their jobs done. So you have to incorporate the human element, and that's what I do now. So now I tell people that I program the whole package, the hardware, the software, and the wetware, the people. Someday I want to retire, but not quite give it up entirely. I think what I'd really like to do is to teach. I'd like to teach math or science at some high school somewhere, maybe teach C language at a small college where I can ditch my study halls and go into the computer lab and write some code. Thank you.